And he says, quote, I think we have a great chance as it pertains to winning Super Bowls. Joy Taylor, you are a resident Steelers fan, so you tell not just me, but tell the world. Can't wait for your answer on this one. When I read this question, I said, I can't wait to hear what Joy Taylor has to say. Are Russell Wilson's championship goals realistic?
The fan in me wants to bring up the 6 championships that the Pittsburgh Steelers have.
It's a lot of them.
It's a lot of them. Yep, a lot. And that Mike Tomlin is yet to have a losing season.
A lot of years, too.
A lot of years. Future Hall of Fame coach. That being said,
what you need to say?
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers were not in New Orleans this year. You know.
Is that a double negative? Can you say it as a positive? It was confusing. You said I wouldn't be surprised if they were not. So if you were,
you know what I said.
What would you mean to say?
Look, I'm not planning on the Steelers being in New Orleans.
Okay. That's where the Super Bowl is this year. Right?
Yes. Yeah. That's where it is. But I like the hope. I like the inspirational words. I'm excited to see what he looks like. If any team was able to do it with a roster and situation that we didn't think was Super Bowl ready, I would say it's the Steelers. But more importantly, when it comes to championship expectations, if you are a championship level player, if you have won a championship, if you've been there, if you've seen high levels of success in the league, I expect you to be talking about championships. Aaron Rodgers is talking about championships. He ain't been there in, I'm not gonna bring it up.
Yeah, leave 8 out of it.
Okay. I'm saying though, he's talking about championships and they haven't been to the playoffs in 14 years. So 13, 14 years. So I don't ever want to hear anything from a Super Bowl winning player other than we have championship expectations. What are the expectations? Are they realistic? Most of these teams' expectations are not realistic. There are a lot of teams that we talk about as being Super Bowl contenders or teams that are going to compete in the postseason that will not be there late into the postseason. But you should go into the season expecting to achieve at a high level, especially if you have already done that.
That's well said. That's well said. What I'm about to say is cruel. I apologize in advance. No, championship expectations and goals aren't realistic for Russell Wilson, especially not in Pittsburgh. Steelers and championship over the last decade plus, we shouldn't even be talking about those. We shouldn't talk about those two things. The Steelers have not won a playoff game since 2016. 23 NFL teams have won playoff games since then, including 11 AFC teams. Every team in the AFC North, not named the Steelers, has won a playoff game since the Steelers last won their playoff game, including the laughingstock of the AFC North, the Cleveland Browns, a team that drafted me. Shout out to y'all, Dog Pound. And y'all beat the Steelers. The Bengals have won 5 games. The Ravens have won 2 games, playoffs. The Browns have won 1 playoff game. We praise the Steelers for Mike Tomlin being above average over the last, he hasn't had a losing record. 10-7. Are we praising the Steelers for 10-7? Now, Mike Tomlin is obviously a first ballot Hall of Fame coach. Never having a losing season is maybe one of the most impressive statistics that any coach will ever have. But in the last 8 years, what have the Steelers done to talk championship? What we know about the Pittsburgh Steelers and what we know about the Mike Tomlin era is they were incredibly elite during the first 5 years of Ben Roethlisberger's run. Ben Roethlisberger played for 18 years. So what about the other 13?
It's hard to win.
And no doubt it is. It sure is hard to win in the playoffs for the Steelers because they haven't done it in the last 8 years. So I can't add Russell Wilson, who also hasn't won a playoff game, I think, since 2017, to the Steelers, who haven't won a playoff game since 2016, and think that not winning since 17 and not winning since 16 is going to equal winning in 2024. I just don't believe that to be the case. TJ.
I'm with you. If I put a percent, I'm not going to say 0%. I'll say 2% chance. 2%? Like, I love the optimism. I do, because every team that's in training camp, we in training camp, you look at, man, we going to be good this year. Everybody, we going to be really good this year. And then the season starts, you're like, oh, wow, we nowhere near as good as I thought. So the optimism, I like it. And if he's going to hold his hat on anything, he can look at that defense and say, this is very similar to what I had in Seattle. Play good defense, run the ball, play action. But the Russ of the last 3 years that I've seen, 1 in Seattle, 2 in Denver, he's not leading his team to the Super Bowl. He isn't. And the AFC is such a loaded conference. The Steelers might be 11th, 12th best team in the conference. And so, very wishful thinking. It's a way to rally the troops in the locker room and get them to believe, but He's just talking more than anything else. It's not realistic at all.
T, I got a question. All right, this ain't no shade, this ain't no nothing, because I don't even know the answer to the question.
All right.
You played for head coach Cincinnati.
Marvin Lewis.
Marvin Lewis. How long?
7 years?
How many playoff games y'all win?
With Marvin, none. They won when I left.
Right. So out of them 7 years with Marv that y'all won no playoff games, in that locker room, did you think he was going to the Super Bowl? You thought y'all had a shot?
Oh, every year. Every year.
That's all I'm saying.
Until the season started. Until the season started, and then you realize,
That's all I'm saying, man. At one point,
Jay, realistic.
At one point, it's tough to sit up here, not stand because I'm sitting, to sit up here on TV and lose the player in me. What is Russ supposed to say? Even when they signed Russ, or if the Steelers would have signed another quarterback, all we've been saying for years with the Pittsburgh Steelers, if they had a quarterback. If they had that's all we've been saying.
That's
if
a lie,
Coach
Jay.
Tomlin had a quarterback.
Hey,
so
you know
for
what he
me,
say? I like
the
our
season
chances.
is not here yet.
I like our chances.
But if they made the playoffs with what they had last year and the way they played defense, and you add Russ,
James, that's the biggest
and
lie
Russ
we tell on
starts,
television. It's the biggest
and
lie.
he can play at an average level, kind of like the
biggest
level that he
lie
played
we
at
tell on
last year.
television.
everybody else is getting
I don't
better
understand
also.
why they cannot have a chance.
Everybody else is getting better.
But my question is,
I understand that, but why can't they have a chance?
Yeah, first of all, he said, I think they have a great chance. He didn't say we're going to the Super
Thank
Bowl.
you.
He said, I think they have a great chance, which, again, what is he supposed to say? He's supposed to
That's
be
a
the
different
starting
question. I
quarterback.
agree with you on that.
So, okay, so then,
Sure, you can lie.
so,
I agree.
Lie.
but my question
Man
is,
right here just
who,
said that.
who has a realistic chance? Who has a realistic chance?
In the AFC, we've talked about it, about 7 teams. I think you said 5.
7 teams of going to the Super Bowl. Who are they?
What
was you about to say?
Joe Burrow.
The Bengals, the Chiefs, the Ravens,
Okay.
the Texans.
Yeah,
Why the Texans?
Because of what they did last year.
Hold on, though. What did the Texans do last
You
year?
sneak into the playoffs and you win a playoff game.
But
and
against-
nobody
against-
expects
against
with a
who?
rookie
Not
doing
even
that
who?
against
Against who?
another playoff
Not even
team.
that. To me,
Oh, against another playoff team. That's very good. That is factually accurate. What in the nuance of what happened? And this is no shade to the Texans
Get 'em,
at
boy.
all. I think the Texans are going to be good this year. What about what happened with the Texans last year actually, during the regular season, puts you in position to say that they are a championship-level team?
because they had championship-level quarterback play. They had championship level. When CJ Stroud had 16
Did they
touchdowns,
play in
4
a
interceptions.
championship weekend game that I missed?
No, only 2
What
teams
happened in the
did.
second
We're
round of the
projecting.
playoffs?
Yeah, that's
You're
the thing.
projecting, correct. We're projecting. What I'm saying is you're projecting these things. There are really, at the end of the season, to TJ's point, really, I believe 3. I'll give you 4 because of championship weekend. Teams that could actually win the Super Bowl. You know, I know that because they didn't make it to championship weekend.
They didn't.
We talk about how talented these
Who's
teams
your 3
are.
or 4 teams out the AFC?
Steelers. They got to be in there.
Realistically, if we're talking about the highest level, there's
realistic,
really
bro.
3.
James.
But I'm saying we're going to talk about the Jets in a couple seconds. The Jets haven't been to the playoffs since 2010.
But when
We're talking about 2016. 2010 was the last time they went to the playoffs.
I bet you somebody
Not
to
won a
your left
playoff
thinks the
game.
Jets going to get in the playoffs.
And you know what? He does, and he thinks that.
Oh, okay.
He
But
thinks
here's my-
that.
like,
and when
real
we
quick,
talk about
though.
Super Bowls with them, why are we talking about Super Bowls with them?
So I got a question, though, real quick, though, because will you be surprised? Because you talk C.J. Stroud, right? He won a playoff game. He looked the right way and all this type of stuff. Like that's what y'all hanging your hat on right now because you believe the quarterback
Amongst
play
other
of the
things.
Houston Texans is going to
Amongst
be
other
very, very good. So if we get into the playoffs, and Russell Wilson is in the playoffs with the Pittsburgh Steelers, because let's just say the Pittsburgh Steelers is going to the playoffs, because that is what they show us, right? They ain't won in a minute, but they showed you with less, we're going to get in the dance, right? Are we truly, truly surprised if Russell Wilson goes out there and plays well and the Pittsburgh Steelers win a playoff game? Are we surprised?
I would be
am.
surprised.
Yeah.
But
Because of Russell Wilson or because of the Steelers?
Both. Let me first
Why
talk to
the
Russ.
Steelers?
Well, first let me talk about Russ. I was thinking about it this morning, and it's nobody has this conversation, but correct me if I'm wrong. I have not seen the Steelers under Mike Tomlin both identify and or develop a good quarterback.
Why does Russ need developed?
Because what we've seen from Russ is either I don't think they've identified a good quarterback because I don't know if Russ is still good. So, okay, Russ, I don't think you were identified properly. Justin Fields needs to be developed. So I just don't trust quarterback play in Pittsburgh. We talked about Jake Browning. You just talked about him. Zach Taylor, the offensive mind in Cincinnati. Jake Browning looked like a competent NFL starter over there. But meanwhile, every quarterback in Pittsburgh, not named Ben Roethlisberger, who obviously was there prior to Mike Tomlin, every quarterback in Pittsburgh has been bad.
Russ has won a Super Bowl. So let's pretend.
Been to one.
And been to another one. So let's just pretend he can tap into a little bit of what he used to be. Let's pretend he's good next year for the entirety of a season.
But we have to pretend.
Okay, but we're pretending with everyone. We're pretending with everyone.
We haven't seen it in years, though. That's the problem.
I know, but really quick, because I got good memory. All right, I got really good memory. When they signed Russ, you said this was the best landing spot for Russ to go to. That's what you said. Yes.
Why? Give me the intention, because if you remember it.
So you said the best landing spot to go for Russ to go is the Pittsburgh Steelers because it's similar to the situation he is. And now we're sitting up here saying that we'll be surprised with a similar situation that Russ is in, where it might be a situation of like, hey, Rand, we kept the game close for you in the playoffs. Go deliver and put us in field goal position to win a game. Now we just all of a sudden saying because of how Russ looked last year or the year before, we don't trust or believe that can happen?
James, you know, because at this point I think you're
I don't know.
To argue. I think you know within your heart of hearts that the Steelers are not Russell Wilson away from a Super Bowl. I never said that they were a quarterback away. I don't believe that they are. They're not Russell Wilson away.
All these teams that we could mention are any closer to the Super Bowl than the Steelers? Is Jacksonville closer to the Super Bowl than the Steelers?
I believe several teams. Remember, so many teams lost their quarterbacks, right? So I think that now you got to bring the Bengals back in the conversation. You don't have to bring the Jets in, but the Jets will be better with Rodgers than they were with Zach Wilson. Got to bring them back into the situation. Herbert got hurt last year, so you got to bring the Chargers back into the situation. The Jags were 8-3.
I'm not talking about
so this is just.
We're talking about the Super Bowl.
But these are all teams, I believe, that the Steelers have to hurdle. They didn't have to do it.
So this is just your zero belief in Russ. Because that's what you sound like. Because it can't be your zero belief in the Steelers. Because the Steelers and Coach Tomlin have showed you we can make it to the playoffs with nobody at quarterback or with 5 different quarterbacks. You understand what I'm saying? So this has to be your belief in Russ that I just completely do not think he can get it done.
Play quarterback at a championship
Last year,
level.
I seen Russ play at times and in games really good football when his defense played well and he went down there and finished the game off and played solid football. I seen that. Are y'all? So we didn't see Russ in certain games play well.
I'm not joking.
You know who I didn't see?
Come on, man, y'all.
That comment
I know y'all knocking Russ right now, but he did play well in games last year.
I like Russell Wilson as a person.
Nobody's talking about anyone's personality. No one cares about that. We're not talking about that.
JJ as a person. CD as a person.
If we like them, like we shake his hand and say hello, ask how the children are. No one's talking about that. We're talking about what Russell Wilson is capable of doing right now for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
There's nothing that leads you to believe that Russell Wilson is capable of leading the Steelers to a championship.
I disagree.
Unless you want to go to 2012 or 13.
Okay. All right.
I just think defense will play well. I think Russell Wilson still has
Let's move the goalposts for this
him
next conversation. Let's talk about the Jets and see if we keep the same energy.
Victory. I do. I think if the game is very, very close, which it should be, if TJ Watt is healthy and that defense is out there, I think the game will be close. In the regular season, in the playoffs, Steelers ain't just about to get blown out. I think the game will be close. I still believe if the ball's in Russell Wilson's hands at the end of the game, he could deliver a win. I do. I might be different than y'all, but I do.
You know who didn't make the playoffs last year, even though they didn't have their quarterback?
Come on, defense. That's what it is.
You know who didn't make the playoffs last year, even though they didn't have their quarterback? Who's that?
Jets. Jets, they're getting a do-over with Aaron Rodgers this season, but is there more pressure on Rodgers or the head coach, who some say has overstayed his welcome? That's Robert Saleh. Next on Speak.
Is Robert Saleh that much bigger than Aaron, or is that just like that?
Subscribe here to get the latest from Speak, and go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.